What's up, guys? We got a pretty wet day at the house here, which means no RC cars. But because it's wet, it's a good day to do some track maintenance, and I've been building some jumps right behind me here. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some tips, tricks, and a few of the rules that I use when I'm building jumps here on my RC. It's wet out, and one of the first kind of rules to live by is you got to have moisture in your surface or in your dirt when you're going to be making some jumps or doing some work on your tracks. Typically, I try to do big track changes during either the winter, late fall, early spring, when I know there's going to be a good amount of moisture in the surface. If you're just building one or two jumps, it doesn't really matter. And in the middle of the summer when it's dry, you can break out the hose and water as much as you need to make that soil wet enough to where you can work with it. If I'm bringing dirt from outside of the track and bringing it onto it, I'll spray that dirt before I dig any of it up. I'll spray it after I put it in the wheelbarrow. And then once I add it to the surface, I'll spray it as well. And even though there is plenty of moisture here on the track, after I rework some of these jumps, like you're gonna see here shortly, I'll even add water at the end there or move some of this standing water I have and use it to water that to make sure we get it packed in and firmed up before we actually run on it. Now, other than having enough moisture in the surface that you're working with, one of the big things that I focus on when I'm building jumps is making sure I have enough material for the jump I wanna build. Good jumps can come in all sizes, shapes, and forms, but the reality is on my tracks, I want them to flow well, so the landing has to be big enough to accommodate the amount of air we're getting off of the jump, okay? Small jumps, like the ones I've built here in this new rhythm section, you can kind of think of it as a 50-50. The takeoff or the jump itself can be just as big as the landing, okay? I can't count the amount of times I've seen a really big jump with a small landing, so it's really tough to land smooth, and the car hits really hard and bounces on impact. And that's one thing I try to really avoid with my tracks. I want it to flow, I want it to be smooth, so I want to make sure I have enough of a landing that the car can find it and have a little bit of give and take room for error to where you can still probably be smooth if you're either a little bit long and hopefully not too short, because then it's definitely going to be rough when you case that landing. As the jumps start to get bigger and bigger, you don't need a ton of material to make a massive jump to get the car to jump a huge distance. These things are so fast, you can have a relatively small jump and get plenty of air, cover plenty of distance to where you can save a good portion of that material and use it on a good size landing. As the jump gets steeper and you're gonna start to get higher when you take off of that jump, I try to go towards more of a 2/3 rule, okay? We're gonna use only a third of the material on your takeoff, on your jump, and then save 2/3 of that material, if not more, for a nice good size landing. And you can see that on a lot of my jumps around here, especially up on the bigger track. We've got a good ample amount of space and material to where the car can land nice and smooth, okay? So think about that when you're planning out your layouts and the jumps you're gonna put on your tracks is how much material are you gonna need for a good landing to where the car can be smooth as it comes back down to the ground. Now, one of the most important things to think about when you're building a jump, and maybe the most important, okay, is building a smooth enough transition from the surface that you're approaching the jump to the angle at which you take off, okay? And this is really the key to building a good jump, okay? If you have a shorter jump, you can't build too much of a steep face or it's gonna be really square and it's gonna upset the car. All right, guys, we're down here taking a good close look at the first jump into this rhythm section. And this is probably the most crucial jump in the entire section because this really kind of sets the tone. And what you'll notice right now is the jump itself is really, really square, okay? It has a really short transition between the surface that you're approaching on and then the surface that you're leaving on and the angle between the two. To have a really good jump, essentially, the more severe or the more steep that jump is, the longer that transition needs to be to where your car can take it smoothly, okay? And because this one's so short, it really started upsetting the car. And instead of having the choice between doubling and tripling into this section, we were forced to double in there to be consistent and make it every time, okay? So what we're gonna do is bring the rake in, take some material out of the front of this guy to where we can make that transition a little bit longer, a little bit smoother, so we have that option every single time. Now, the steeper your jump, the more important it is to have a longer and longer transition, okay? The difference between that flat approaching surface and the angle of the surface that you're taking off on. If you have a really short jump and you're not jumping very high, odds are that transition could be pretty short because it's probably not gonna upset the car. But the steeper that jump is, the more likely a nice short transition is gonna really upset the car and typically make it kick forward and crash. So we wanna elongate this transition so it's smooth every single time. Now, once you have all the material in place for your jump, one of the most important steps is getting it to pack. And like we talked about from the start of this video, having enough moisture in the surface is the way to get these jumps to pack down. But I'll probably even pull out the hose and run a little bit more water over these jumps once I've done the work that I want to do, just to allow them to firm up. And in the long run, to get these things to set up and firm up and be the way you want them to be, you can probably never have too much water. Even if you're soaking these things and you see some standing water, that'll dry out and you're gonna find a firmer surface once that water's gone. So don't be afraid to add a lot of water to these things to really get them to firm up. All right, we let everything set up overnight. Got a little bit of sunshine out today, so I got up early this morning, got the track cleaned off, got some puddles out of the way, and got to testing our new jumps. And right away, I knew that I screwed up. The jump was definitely good, but honestly, it was just a little bit too big. Doing the triple line was easy, but it was also really easy to get a quad double in there, and that really wasn't the feel I was looking for out of this particular rhythm section. So I immediately got to cutting down that takeoff. The transition itself is nice and smooth, so the jump is really nice, but it was just flat out too big. So once I shortened that thing up, brought the car back out, it ran really nice. Triple is a great line. If you make a mistake in the corner, double will do fine. You'll lose a little bit of time, but you'll still be on the tires moving forward. So both of those different rhythms work, whether it's double or that triple faster line. If you want to see more about track building, I put together a really in-depth video on all the steps that it takes to build one of my tracks in this video right here. I also have a video on jumping RC cars and the simple steps that I use to make sure I make good jumps almost every single time. So you can check that one out right here. But for now, I want to say thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next video.